Elections Modernization Act. Well, I have a few comments to say as somebody who was very involved in municipal politics before I even thought of getting involved in provincial politics, let alone be a candidate or even win in provincial politics. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of concerns. One is I did go around and speak to some of my volunteers and some of the people who used to go to City of Vaughan Council meetings. I was a bit of a regular fixture for a little while when there were issues going on, and people who were really up to date on what's going on in terms of how elections are run and things like that. And when I mentioned this bill, they unanimously said to me, well, this must be about ensuring that we have electronic voting. They felt that that was the most modern thing that we could do for our municipal elections, is to make sure that people can vote electronically from their computers, from the convenience of their work, their school, or their home. But that really doesn't seem to be the focus of this bill, and I think it's something that we do need to discuss here at length. I know there's a lot of people who are concerned about voter fraud and other electronic glitches and things like that, but I think the fact that the traffic and the congestion has gotten so much worse in the GTA that it's made it very difficult for some people who have a long commute to be able to vote. Not everybody is that organized or that prepared or that knowledgeable to know that they can register to vote in advance by mail in many circumstances, or they can just go to the returning officer and vote in advance in various different ways. Most people like to vote on election day for the simple fact, even if they're aware of advance voting, because they don't want to decide to the last second. They figure there could be a scandal the day before the election, and they want to be able to cast their ballot how they want to cast their ballot that day. And you can understand that, Madam Speaker. I brought up, when I spoke on this bill, just during what we call a 2-minute comment, yesterday about the elected chair for York Region, because that's something that people in York Region who really care and are interested in the political process feel very strongly about, and I think that would move York Region to be more modern and to be more democratic. And I'm very disappointed that even though it was a government MPP from York Region who put forward that private member's bill, his own government seems to be stalling it, and you have to ask yourself a few questions. Why? What pressure this government is seeing from some of the elected officials, regional councillors and mayors in York Region, who like the fact that they get to choose the chair rather than the collective democratic voting process. We heard a lot of discussion as well about the registration date being moved from January 1st to May 1st, and that would somehow shorten the campaign process. But we're also moving up the last date. So it's actually a shorter process if someone files on the first date, for anybody who files on the first date every election, a candidate. But if a candidate always files on the last date, it actually lengthens the campaign period, which actually is maybe a little bit fairer. After all, a lot of voters have a lot of campaign fatigue, and people certainly don't want to see the election signs up for as long as they often have to see them, and we all know that there's a lot of complaints about that. There's a $100 cost to register, and I see pros and cons, because we want it to be inexpensive enough that it isn't a detriment to for somebody who wants to file as a candidate. But on the other hand, I think very often it's a very cheap way to get your name out there and just advertise whatever business you're in. You're in printing, or especially in real estate. I have a feeling that a lot of candidates in municipal elections have no intention of winning. They just figure, for $100, talk about advertising. I could put my signs up everywhere, and I can get interviewed in the newspaper and get my picture put up in a few places, and bingo, it's great for business. So I think that that's kind of an unfortunate part of having it so cheap. Ranked ballots. Well, there's a lot of discussion about ranked ballots, and I have found that it's up there with almost religion in terms of discussing difficult topics with people. And as somebody who went through a recount, I have to tell you that I'm very concerned with how that process would work with ranked balloting. I'm very concerned that ranked balloting would make it very difficult for some of the candidates on either end of the spectrum. It'll make it almost impossible for them. And the last comment is on the online voters list. Is what I would like to see. Right now in Vaughan, I don't know about other municipalities, we're given a voters list on a CD or printed, and we're told we have to sign a form that we will return it and not save that information. I just wonder if there's a better electronic system for people to access online. You can't download it, but you can just view it, and maybe manually you can write it out somewhere, which people could manually do with the CD, I guess. If they're so inclined, it would be pretty hard to stop them, even though they've agreed not to. So I'm very concerned about that whole voters list, and I'm very glad that I had this opportunity to make a few comments. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Further debate.